What's up, LEGO builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios for week 9 of building the Battle of Coruscant in LEGO. This week, I'm hoping to make some big progress with the skyscraper portion of this mock, just kind of talking about the skyscrapers in general a little bit, showing where I'm going to start working with them and how they're going to actually connect to the apartment building. Because I know there's going to be an apartment building and I know there's skyscrapers up above, but I feel like it's going to look kind of weird if they just sit directly on top of this flat expansive building. So I'm going to be diving into that, as well as finishing the roof for the Barracks building and getting a little bit more tiling done on the base floor. All that means lots of building is ahead. If you're excited, don't forget to execute order 66 on that like button. And while you're down there, if you haven't already, consider subscribing and tapping that notification bell so you'll be notified as soon as my next video drops. I want to get some work done with the skyscrapers and the top of the apartment building this week, so I'm going to start by plating off some more of the roof. I'm really happy I decided to keep all of my parts after finishing my big mocks, because when they come in, they have come in handy so many times. A lot of what you have seen so far plate-wise for this mock has come from my old Naboo and Umbara mocks from 2020 with some Kato Namudi and Utapau sprinkled around. Back when I completed those early mocks, I was actually, especially with Naboo, I was thinking about reselling the pieces after each mock to kind of pay for the next one. I even created a Bricklink store so that I could sell those parts, but thankfully, I never ended up making that Bricklink store public. This section needs a ton of support pillars, but I would rather put in more than I need than not enough, because I don't want the weight of the buildings on top to make the roof sag, and who knows how long those buildings are going to have to sit up here before this mock is finished, because it could take up to a year to finish this bad boy. I'm finally almost done with the top layer of this apartment complex. I can't believe how many top plates I have eaten up. I think I've gone through pretty much my whole store for Umbara, Naboo, and what was left of Kato Namoidia. Granted, a lot of the Naboo was used for the foundations of this section and that section, but still, I wasn't anticipating using up this much plate. Luckily, I'm going to be ripping out this whole side and replacing with brick, so I should have plenty of plate to do the other sections, and they are not going to be as big as this one. I'm very pleased with how strong it is up here. You can see pretty much anywhere I can push down fairly hard. There are a couple sections I know to stay away from, mostly the edges, and it feels like a little bit right there. So what happens next is I'm going to finish tiling off this top, and then I have to figure out what I'm going to do with this backside. I'm thinking about maybe just making it brick, because this apartment hallway is only going to be this tall, and then I'm going to build a roof, and then it's going to come out this way and then come up right here and meet up with the terrain. So this will be the only exposed section. For the hallway, I did add some more stuff. I added these little arches to help support the roof and just give this wall a little bit more detail. I'll probably add some pillars on this side too to help hold up that wall, because it's going to have to support a huge section of brick or plate. But with this upper area nearing completion, I can now start to plan what I want to do with the skyscrapers. I'm not sure how I want to connect them to this building. I'm gonna have to do some research and see how the actual skyscrapers on Coruscant are built into the blocks of the lower buildings, if they're just set directly on top or if there's some kind of like interim building that connects the two to each other. I'm not sure, but I definitely want to get the buildings and all this tiled off before I finish the back. That way I can reach under here and hold up this plate while I connect the skyscrapers, and while I tile it off, and if anything breaks, I can reach in there and fix it easier. So this back part's probably going to go on very last. I was also thinking about adding this little platform. Some of you guys may recognize this from my 3 saddest clone deaths video. This is that Thorn's last stand took place on. I thought it'd be kind of cool to add it, kind of like a helipad, but for spaceships, for some super rich person or alien who lives up here in these fancier apartments, maybe gets his own private little landing pad. Anyways, that's pretty much everything I have to update you guys with. Time to get back to work. I guess the theme of this episode should be roofs, because I am now going to finish the Barracks roof. I'm going to start by figuring out the general size of the removable portion of the roof and get all those plates connected together. It doesn't look pretty right now, but all I need to do is get the dimensions down, and then I'm going to remove the plates on top and add the finishing details like short domes, vents, grills, tiles, all that great greebling stuff that goes into base buildings. I found this great picture of the top of a clone base that I'm going to use for inspiration. This roof has some dark red highlights on it, which I will add as well, so I should probably go back and add some red to the walls of the barracks to match the roof. I also want a portion of this roof to sit on top of the permanent section of the roof that doesn't get removed, so I'm gonna have to tile off the top of that section as well. All right, look at this finished barracks building. Well, mostly finished. Pretty much all the outside is finished. I'm actually really happy with how the roof turned out. As I was building it, I think partially because I didn't have much of a vision for it, I wasn't really happy with how it was looking. And I was like, man, I feel like this isn't going to even look like what I need it to. But I was like, just finish it, put it on there. You know, you can at least see what it looks like. And now that it's done, and I must say I'm pretty pleased. I really like the little domes on top. I feel like for some reason that's just very reminiscent and very representative of a clone building in a base. And then, you know, I've got the classic dark bluish gray stripes, dark red stripes, light bluish gray base coloring. I did change something with the roof. So originally I was going to have it be shorter and just partially overlap onto this permanently built section that you guys saw earlier. But as I was building, I didn't realize I had overlapped this quarter round piece all the way to the edge of the base. So it ended up covering the entirety of the roof, and I think that looks much better. It gives it almost like an oval-like shape because you've got this round part over here that partially lines up with this angled section of the wall. I'm so happy to have my first building done. I did change the tiles on the front here from dark bluish gray to a dark red just so I could match the roof, so there could be some more color here on the front. One thing I am thinking of doing is taking this dark bluish gray stripe and running it all the way down the front of the base. I will have to move these little vents over this direction one stud, but I just feel like these light bluish gray walls are just too bland still, and it looks kind of weird. And I feel like it looks a little strange having this stripe end right here. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is it worth running that down all the way, or does it not matter? It comes off pretty easily too. The only thing I need to adjust is over here in the corner. This section is just two 1x2 bricks, and they connect to the roof so good that it ends up just pulling them out of their spot. So I'll have to rework that a little bit. So you can see I modified the permanent sections as well. Originally it was just a big strip of plate, but because of this plate right here that's holding these 2x3s onto the roof, I had to cut a little section out. And because the roof runs all the way, it doesn't matter now that this little part's exposed because you can't even tell once the roof is on. Now, moving back over here. So I did some research on the skyscrapers and how they connect to these blocks of buildings. And you can see there just aren't very many skyscrapers in the financial district, the section I'm building. So I'm not going to include a whole bunch. And this may answer the question for a lot of you guys why there aren't more skyscrapers. Because, you know, typically when you think Coruscant, you think bustling skyscrapers, highways up in the sky full of flying cars. But that's just not really what this section is. But I did see that some of the skyscrapers are built directly on top of the flat section of the buildings. And then some of them, there's like a little intermediary building that's kind of like half the apartment building, half the skyscraper. So I'll probably do a combination of both, connecting some straight to this apartment block and then making little structures for others. You'll also see the tops of these are not flat at all, but they're very bumpy with what looks like almost an entire little city up here with all kinds of little buildings, structures, pipes. I would imagine it's probably pretty similar to what we see on the tops of our large apartment buildings here on Earth, with lots of like little greenhouses, warehouses, stairwells, pipes, smaller buildings. So I am going to need to do that. I kind of knew I was going to have to do something like that, but I didn't realize it was going to be on that big of a scale. So that will push back me being able to put the skyscrapers on here a little bit. But next week I should be able to get started on a lot of those littler structures. I think what I'm going to do is just follow this general principle of what I did with this, just like build structures of plate instead of like building brick built structures. That way I can make different kinds of shapes and structures up here much easier than if I were using bricks. So big plans for up here, definitely going to be starting on that next week. But for this week, that pretty much wraps up everything. I am going to tile off in front of the barracks just so that I can get that area finished, because I want to take thumbnail pictures there and other pictures. I just think it'll look cool. I want to showcase it. But that wraps up everything for this week. Once I'm all finished here, it's time to hit the outro. I'm really happy to have finally seen and really figured out for myself how I would like to connect the skyscrapers to the building, because now I can start working on that part of the building, getting it ready for the skyscrapers. And the next thing I need to do for the actual skyscrapers is figure out their proportioning, how big they're going to be in comparison to the building. I don't want this giant skyscraper sitting on this tiny little apartment building, and vice versa. I don't want these tiny little skyscrapers sitting on top of this giant expansive building. So I'm going to have to figure out the correct height and width and which designs I'm going to be putting on, which designs I'm going to be using. All that will be going down next week. I really want to hone in and focus and just hopefully have at least one skyscraper actually built and connected to the apartment buildings by the end of next week. All that being said, don't forget to let me know what you thought about this episode. I really appreciate your guys' feedback on this series. It helps me a lot, and I will catch you guys next time. But until then, happy building.